I'm David, one of Quartz's younger brothers. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. It is an honor for me to share a few words by video today in celebration of Quartz's life. One cannot celebrate Quartz without thinking of these words: faithful servant and bold witness. I would first like to share some early memories of Quartz, things that people who met Quartz later in his life may have never heard. Being just 2 years younger than Quartz, we were very close as we grew up. Best friends, played ball together, and sat next to each other every Sunday on the Redford pew at church, a pew that was always occupied by 9 children, and our wonderful Christian parents who taught us not only by word but by example. Our birthplace was a small town in southwest Missouri, where we spent our early years. But when Quartz had finished 6th grade, I my 4th grade, our family moved to Decatur, a suburb of Atlanta. Our new home was just 2 blocks from the elementary school we would be attending in the fall. This school had the largest and best playground of any school in the city. So that summer, Quartz and I spent many hours there throwing and hitting baseballs. One day we got there to discover that 2 teams of older high school age boys were playing one of those self-organized baseball games. So we went over and sat down on a bank behind home plate to watch. A few minutes passed, and the catcher of one of the teams announced that he had to go home. As he left, the pitcher on his team shouted to his players, "Can anyone here catch?" 2 seconds didn't pass before Quartz yelled out, "I can catch." I was shocked because I knew that Quartz had never put on a mask or a chest protector in his life. Well, someone said, "Okay, kid, come on down. We'll give you a try." Quartz looked like he had done this all his life and did very well behind the plate that day. That story just shows how much Quartz loved competing, welcomed any challenge, and performed best when the pressure was on. This was the beginning of what would follow: a great high school career as a catcher and as an all-around athlete. Quartz was not big physically, but he had a big heart, and this is why he excelled in every sport: football, basketball, and baseball. At the end of his senior year in football, he was named by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution the most outstanding high school back in the state of Georgia. I personally was indebted to Quartz for helping me through my high school years and for many years to follow. He was a mentor. He also encouraged me, and taking as much delight in my accomplishments as his own. And here's another story about Quartz. When we were in school, there was no middle school. Elementary school consisted of grades 1 through 7, and high school grades 8 through 12. Also in high school, at least in football and baseball, there were no 8th grade or junior varsity teams, only varsity teams. Very few made these teams before entering the 10th grade or later. But Quartz made the varsity baseball team as an 8th grader. Well, sort of. He caught all the batting practice for the team, but didn't actually get into the game until the last game of the season. He just had one at bat and got a little blooper single. He jokingly always claimed he led the team in hitting with a 1,000 batting average. I would remind him that may be true, but you are also the only player to ever have his average drop 700 points from one year to the next. Quartz had tremendous dedication and drive in sports, but he was to show even greater dedication years later when he, Joan, and their family established their Christian ministry in Los Angeles. Many, many boys and girls, young people and adults had their physical and spiritual needs met through the sacrificial ministry of this family. During those years, Quartz and his family were so many miles away that we did not get to see them as often as we would have liked. But there are wonderful memories of those times when we did. And on every occasion when Courts did get home to Atlanta, he made a point to schedule visits with former high school classmates and teammates still living in this area. Not just to reminisce about old times, but more importantly to share Christ with them and tell them what Christ had done in his life. He was a faithful, bold witness for the Savior that he loved. When I think of Courts now, in his new home in heaven, I think of the words of a song by Christian artist Ray Boltz, entitled "Thank You." Here are the words to that song. I dreamed I went to heaven, and you were there with me. We walked the streets of gold beside the crystal sea. We heard the angels singing, and someone called your name. You turned and saw this young man. He was smiling as he came. He said, "Friend, you may not know me now." And then he said, "But wait. You used to teach my Sunday school when I was only 8. And every week you would say a prayer before the class would start. One day when you said that prayer, I asked Jesus in my heart. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I have a life that was changed. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am so glad you gave." Then another man stood before you. He said, "Remember the time a missionary came to your church. His pictures made you cry. You didn't have much money, but you gave it anyway. Jesus took the gift you gave, and that's why I'm here today." One by one they came, far as the eye could see, each life somehow touched by your generosity. Little things that you had done, the sacrifices made, unnoticed on the earth, in heaven now proclaimed. I know up in heaven you are not supposed to cry. I'm almost sure there were tears in your eyes as Jesus took your hand and you stood before the Lord. He said, "My child, look around you, for great is your reward." Courts is now where he has longed to be throughout his long illness, sitting at the feet of Jesus, praising the one who has welcomed him home by saying, "Courts, well done, good and faithful servant."